Hello, my name's John Ennis, curator producer at Journeys in Design, and you join us today as we continue our maiden voyage around the coastlines of Scotland with Salvage Scotland 2020. So we've headed north onwards, and from Scotland's most northerly shoreline, Caithness and Sutherland, like a shelf at the top of the country, and we're taking a ferry ride from Scrabster to Stromness in Orkney, one of a pair of the Northern Isles, the other being the Shetlands. More of Orkney in a moment. Just to think about the word salvage. It's born of the word salve, to heal or soothe, and it refers to saving items that would otherwise be lost, often from sunken ships. So with that in mind, I'm particularly pleased today to be resting a while in Stromness, nearby Stromness, to meet and chat with knot enthusiast and maker, Mark Cook. Mark, hi.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you very much. And you're in your studio there. Mark, you and I first met in Newton Moor in the Highlands, actually, in 2018. You came along to see Our Linen Stories, one of Journeys in Design's key programs, when we were based in the Highland Folk Museum. And I recall on that theme, we talked about growing flax, and I think even perhaps something about nettles and other natural fibers to make cordage and rope. Did you take that anywhere?
Yes, I did. Well, I've made cordage out of nettles for a while, just playing around. There we go. There's a couple of bits I did a couple of years ago.
Great, so it does work.
Garden. Last year I was particularly interested in having a go at flax and making some cordage out of flax.
So you grew flax in Orkney?
And last year I grew a small patch, I haven't actually made any cordage yet, but I have processed it so far.
You certainly have.
And
fantastic.
I intend to continue that and try and make some my own rope.
Wonderful. Well, look, we'll return to that in another encounter, I hope. But at the same time, I heard about your wonderful work using salvaged rope and netting to create very lovely mats and trivets and whatnot. And in fact, I have gratefully one hanging on. Oh, we'll come back to that. And your initiative's called Afrayedknot. But let's have a little think about how you ended up. You're not an Orcadian from your accent, that's clear. And in fact, I know that you're just about 4 miles outside Stromness, the sort of second city of the Orkneys, if you like. But can we map out a little bit of your own journey? You started out as a Londoner.
That's right, yeah. I was born in East 18, which is South Woodford in London. Unfortunately too close to the middle of the last century, and lived there till I was 13.
There was a reason you moved.
Yes, we had to move out of London because they decided to build the M25 and the M11, and we were basically near the junction where the two met.
Bang! And that was a bit of enforced purchase and
yes, compulsory purchase. And the family moved down to Clacton-on-Sea, which is about
Clacton-on-Sea. So your teens were spent quite intimately with the seashore. Tell me about that atmosphere at that time.
It was great. I loved it. I must admit, I spent a lot of time on the beach and down the seafront. I was lucky the family also bought a beach hut right on the front.
Okay, you know that a beach hut is many people's dreamscapes. The notion of a beach hut, how wonderful!
Absolutely, was ours as well, and mine. And even though, many of my school friends, as they got older, spent the summer holidays working on the pier and in the amusements, I didn't. I just went down to the beach hut and spent my summer on the beach.
Of course you did. Perfect. Now, I'll cast you back to a story you told me about this interest in knotting that happened from quite an early age. And there's a particular product we talked about. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I blame my interest on knotting on one of my sisters. I've got two older sisters. I don't know which one showed me how
too.
to. But back in London, from our little corner shop at the top of our road, you could buy a thing called a Scooby-Doo. And
right.
not the
cartoon animation, a small D.
Yeah.
And what was a Scooby-Doo?
It was just plastic bits of string, coloured bits of string, and the instructions on how to make a small key fob. And one of my sisters showed me how to do it, and I've been tying knots ever since. And there's one that I now, that bit in the middle, that's the bit that I first learnt. This is now made out of paracord, but I still do that same knot quite regularly now.
And, they're great key fobs. Great. Yeah. So there you go. That was a technique that those younger hands were able to manipulate early on, and that stayed with you. So there you go, from London to Clacton-on-Sea. And then we've talked about it before. You trained in nursing for the learning disabled. It took you eventually to work with behaviourally challenged kids in Birmingham. But you didn't escape your watery ways.
No, that's right. When I was in Birmingham, bought a narrowboat, and late 80s and through the 90s, we had that was our escape. It was our holiday cottage on the canal, on the cut.
Absolutely wonderful. And I believe your partner, who fell pregnant, spent some of her maternity leave on the canal boat.
That's right, yeah. With our first son, she virtually lived on it, and I would go after work and go back there each night. And in fact, that son lived on it himself for a number of years after we moved up to Orkney. He didn't move up. He stayed in Birmingham and lived on the boat. Again,
another encounter I'd love to engage with you on, and the nature of the industrial and trading heritage along canals and the great waterways. So future conversations. Then, and I used to be a medic, and a number of my colleagues who worked in nursing for behavioural disturbed folk. It's not a job for life. It's a very, very, for them, very exhausting and very committed, and a recognition that at one time it was right to move. But your move was to things creative. So I was very intrigued to hear that. You moved away and then you became a photographer.
Yeah, that's right. I lasted nearly 10 years and there, but as you say, I had to get out for my own sake. And
I think it's a recognition of the broader meaning of health and well-being, that your job at least allies and contributes to that, and if it doesn't, then you can do it for so long and then move along. So we talk about that as part of our look in well-being and journeys in design. But the interesting then next move is, of course, to where you are now, and there was a bit of a false start in some regards in relation to Orkney. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, many years ago, I'd actually booked a holiday to come to Orkney on a self-catering cottage, which was on its own island. Everything planned. We'd got the guidebooks, the maps, but it turned out that my wife was expecting our first son, and basically the woman who owned the place didn't think it was a very good idea that we should come up and spend
she might have had a point.
So we had to cancel the holiday, and we just said, we'll get there one day. And eventually, when my wife was 50, I surprised her for her birthday by booking a holiday in Orkney, and we came up with our 21-year-old son, who she'd been carrying last time we were planning to go there, and two other boys. and that was at the end of November, and we'd moved here by August. Because we just
a classic. We're going to go, and we fell in love with it. You know what? We could live here, and within the year.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So I've been lucky enough myself to visit Orkney, the islands, and it is quite a remarkable place. It's an open air cultural museum, and the natural history as well is fantastic. The 5,000-year-old Neolithic sites, the 12th century Maze How burial chamber, the 20th century Italian chapel, and the Nissan hut. These are all memories that I have of my trip, but also these incredible natural landscapes, the sounds looking out across the waters, the rock formations, Old Man of Hoy, very famous. And I guess you're not going to escape the water on Orkney.
No, you're never very far from the water.
and that brings us to this notion of the shoreline where we meet, land meets water, and actually the threat that those shorelines allow us to see with the old ropes, the plastic and stuff that now we can see on shorelines that we've all become so much aware of. What's intriguing is that you've looked at that and it's become a source for your creative practice with Afrayedknot. And before we talk about that, could we talk a little bit about ghost nets and ghost fishing for those who don't know? And I first heard about that through my conversations with you in the Highlands.
Yeah, I must admit, I hadn't heard about it before I moved here. Ghost gear, ghost nets, ghost fishing. It's abandoned, lost fishing equiment, whether it's line or nets or monofilament nets or whatever. It's old old fishing gear, and it's floating around the sea, and it's causing an awful lot of damage, not only to marine life but to the environment. I first came across a lump of rope on the beach, and that was the first mat that I made.
From the beach found, from the found object of the beach. And just think a little bit about this notion of calling it ghost nets. It is a scary phenomenon. I mean, I think these nets can entangle larger marine animals, seals and dolphins, turtles in other waters. And they can sink down, not just float, they can sink down and harm reefs and seabeds. So what was interesting when speaking to you is find out that how technical it is to retrieve these old things. And it's not just your average diver diving down, but ghost fishing describes the specialist diving that's required to salvage these old bits of gear, rope, nets, lines, whatever it happens to be. And there's a particular link between Ghost Fishing, which is an international network, and Ghost Fishing UK and their training grounds for divers. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, around the same sort of time as I discovered this rope that was being washed up on the beach, I read in the paper there was a local team, well, not so much a local team, a charity called Ghost Fishing UK, that were up in Orkney for a week or two, and they were taking divers into Scapa Flow, which is a big body of water, a big natural harbour, and they were clearing the seabed of the ghost gear.
The particular phenomenon that I found when I was up in Orkney, and I had never heard of it, and I didn't know the history, I didn't know my history at that point. Scapa Flow is a particular pertinence, and it comes to the fact that I saw a lot of German divers up visiting, and I think this is an odd phenomenon. What's this about? But yes, Scapa Flow has a particular relevance.
Well, the particular interest for German people, if you like, is at the end of the First World War, the whole of the German fleet was brought into Scapa Flow and was held there. and basically while they sorted out what they were going to do with the fleet afterwards. To cut a long story short, the commander of the German fleet ordered that all the boats be scuttled, be sunk. And so there are a number of ships still at the bottom of Scapa Flow, and they make some of the best wreck diving in Europe.
Indeed. And in fact, yes, allowing these specialist divers to come up and train in this particular area, because these wrecks and whatever has trapped some of this rope and gear, so that lets them, the trainers, work with the divers in this specialist way. Quite extraordinary.
That's right. It's because the whether it's rocks or ships or whatever's on the bottom, if the ropes and the nets get entangled into them, then that causes a big problem. But you do need to be a very high level of a diver, a very technical diver to do it. You can't just swim down and cut the rope free, and it's not safe to do that. So yeah, this charity, they give up their own time and give up their holidays to clear the seabed all over the UK. And as you say, it's a big organisation now all over, not just in the UK, going around clearing the seabed. And
you, this is where it links in so wonderfully to your own work with an initiative you've called Afrayedknot, where you are using salvage rope and your knot skills to create some really lovely product. And I'm very lucky to have up on my wall an example of that. We see you today in your workshop, I guess, your workbench. Is there anything else you'd want to? I mean, this is a wonderful example. I'm really pleased to have it, and it's going to form a large pan trivet. But indeed, you can use them for mats, and you do create other bits and pieces of product. Is there anything there to hand that you'd like to kind of show us?
Well, this is probably my most popular one. It's called an ocean plat.
Now, Mark, take us through how that is formed, because are there 5 different ropes in there?
No, it's one length of rope.
One length of rope. So
there's probably, hang on, I've got it written on the card. There's roughly 21 meters of rope in there, and it's gone round 5 times.
Right.
And this is where the connection with Ghost Fishing UK were. You know, I heard about them bringing all this rope up and thought, well, I can make that. It saves me going on the beach looking for it. I can make something like that. So I got in touch with them, and they gave me all the rope that they brought up. And this is the sort of thing that I make. Now I run workshops, and I tell anybody that, if you can tie your shoelaces, you can make one of these.
I like the enthusiasm that lies behind that. I think you're underestimating the skill base. But great, so you run workshops up in Orkney. I'm looking forward in the coming months to come and visit you, and I would very much like to time that with one of your workshops. I see something rather intriguing on a shelf up behind you as well. What is that bendy thing?
Yeah. This, admittedly, the outside of this isn't made from old fishing rope. That is new natural fibre rope, but the core of this is made up of old fishing rope, and it's a fender. It's only a small one, but it's a boat's fender, go around the front of a boat. Okay,
so for those, and I've only discovered the word fender in relation to boats of late. We're working with a wonderful weaver off the Fife coast in Burnt Island, and she's been scouring the local boatyard and has found some old fenders and using them as frames on which she's weaving some beautiful things. So we're working with Susie Redmond later on in the program. But there is a fender, and a fender is the thing that you'd sit on the edge of a boat to stop it banging against the pier or whatever and damage it.
Yeah,
so they would have been traditionally made of some sort of natural product, a cane or a rope. Now the plastic barrels, of course, often. little
yeah.
animals. But that's very charming shape and piece.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully I'll get a boat again one day and I can make my own set.
Okay.
I made the fenders for my narrowboat previously.
Ah, wonderful. Look, Mark, it's wonderful to see you in full flow there in the workshop, and great to have spoken to you. And it's so good that we've been able to link in with this particular project in Salvage, Scotland. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope we can meet in better times, and when we can all get on the ground and perhaps do some wonderful weaving with your rope and knotting with you. But thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All the very best.
Bye.